Welcome back to At the Capitol. I'm Matt Swenson. This is State Representative Andrew Falk. Welcome back, Andrew.
Hey, Matt. It's always great to be with you.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
again.
bet. You bet. It's good to have you here, and it's good to have you folks tuning in at home to hear what's happening here at the Capitol and hear what Representative Falk is doing on your behalf. And you folks are looking at a very serious budget deficit again this year. Last year you looked at a $6.4 billion deficit. This year you're looking at a $1 billion deficit, and next year state economist Tom Stinson predicts another $5.8 billion deficit.
Well, Matt, the way you put it forward doesn't make the picture sound very good, but we're doing what we can to go and address this problem in a responsible and fair manner, and it hasn't been easy. We've had to make a lot of difficult decisions, and unfortunately that means that people's quality of life and services in Minnesota, they're going to see some impacts, but we have a job to do. We have to balance the budget, and we've been making those tough decisions. And believe me, they are tough decisions. Already this session, when we were approximately halfway through, we were able to trim $313 million from the state budget. Now, those cuts were not easy to make, but we had to make them, and we tried to do them in a fair and responsible manner. One of the things where we differed, at least the legislature differed significantly from the governor, was in cuts to local government aid. And we did have cuts going through, but the ones we pushed through were much more targeted and in a much more fair and responsible manner than what the governor proposed. So I am thankful that he was able to take the legislature's position on those cuts to local government aid.
And at the same time, you're setting real priorities in this bill. I know that it cut in 10 specific areas, but for veterans, I know that you wanted to increase funding, particularly when we have so many of our young men and women serving overseas right now.
Absolutely, and even though it was only a small increase in Veterans Affairs, we were able to put that through. That highlights one of the priorities that the legislature has always had. We want to make sure that we take care of our veterans, and if there are gaps where they're not getting the services from the federal government, we've made sure that our state takes care of them, steps in and fills in those gaps.
And I know that you still have a lot of the budget solution left on the table. That's because we're still waiting for more information from the federal government on how much federal money will be coming to Minnesota in the next year.
That's correct. We started this session dealing with a $994 million shortfall, and let's be clear too that that was all approved spending that was signed into law by Governor Pawlenty. We've had a significant issue with revenue collection as a result of the ongoing recession. We've just not had the amount of revenues coming into the state. We know that unemployment has remained higher than we would like. We haven't seen as much of the economy turn around as quickly as we like. We have seen it turn, but it would always be nice if it was turning a little bit faster. And so really it's not so much a spending issue, but it was an issue with the revenue coming in and matching that with what the spending that had already been approved was. So we cut $313 million, and now with the passage of the Federal Health Care Reform Act and some additional federal legislation, I believe we're looking at about $408 million that could come to Minnesota, and I think it's fair to anticipate that. I know the governor has put that into his budget, the legislature is working to put that into their budget, and so we expect that to be there. When you take that and the 313, we're looking at maybe about $150 million of additional cuts. The likely place people will look first is Health and Human Services. I'm not sure if that's the first place I would look. I know that cuts to Health and Human Services disproportionately hurt rural areas, specifically rural hospitals and rural nursing homes. And I'm going to work to do my best to make sure that those areas are protected as much as possible. But that's part of the job. We still have to figure out how we're going to close that remaining budget gap.
And I know at the same time you're also trying to prioritize K12 education in the state of Minnesota, looking for a solution that won't harm our schools in the coming weeks.
That's been a key point that both the governor and the legislature have put forward, that they're working to maintain the funding of our K12 education system. Unfortunately, they had to take a significant shift to their funding, and that's still a work in process. We don't know what the mechanism is going to be to repay that. The governor has not been receptive to any forms of revenue to start that repayment, so it has put a significant burden on our schools. Although they haven't dealt with a hard cut to their budget, that shift has definitely made an impact, and they've had to go out and do measures such as short-term borrowing, and that has raised their expenses.
Clearly a time of very scarce resources in the state of Minnesota, and the legislature has nothing but difficult choices, but nobody told you this job was going to be easy.
Well, that's for sure. I was told looking forward to a difficult session and to expect that when I got here. But with that, there's always the chance to make revisions, to do things better, and a lot of the reforms we've put in place are going to take a couple years to really see the results, but it's good that we're making those tough decisions and putting in place some of those reforms, and it's going to help improve our situation into the future.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for the great work you're doing here at the Capitol. And thanks for tuning in at home. We'll see you next time on At the Capitol.